Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Great to be with you this afternoon. Apologies from Rabbi Wallenberg, whom I know you were expecting to see. Unfortunately, he has a very pressing communal issue that he needs to manage within his own community. So I'm just filling in for him at this time. And it's my pleasure to be with you. And he wishes you all the best and sends you wishes of Shabbat Shalom as well. Hope everyone had a good Shavuot. And it's great that we can once again sing this Friday afternoon prior to Shabbat coming in and have that sense of consistency and that sense of touching base for some of our most familiar tunes. Just before we start the Kabbalat Shabbat service, I want to share a brief thought on this week's Parashat, this week's Torah reading, which is the Parashat of Naso, one of the longest readings of the year, which has in it details of how the Leviim, the Levites, were to act in the desert, and subsequently the whole context here is the Jews are in the desert. They're on their way from Mount Sinai towards the land of Israel. And it also has various other laws in it. Very famously, it has the text of what is called Birkat Kohanim, the priestly blessing, which I'm sure many of you are very familiar with and have heard before. And there is a fascinating halakha, fascinating point of Jewish law about the priestly blessing, which is if the priests do not feel a sense of love towards the people when they are saying the blessing, the priests are, of course, the conduit for the blessing which comes from God. If they don't feel that sense of love, no, they're not doing it right. That's not the way to give the blessing. And this is very curious. Why is it that they would need to feel a sense of love? And how possible can that be towards everybody who is in the room? It might be difficult to really feel that in a pure and total sense, platonic love in that respect. So I found as part of my research in the Rabbi Sachs archives, I also work for Rabbi Sachs Legacy as well as for United Synagogue, a very old sermon which Rabbi Sachs gave on this particular topic. And he suggested as follows. I'll briefly surmise what his thought process was on this. He said that one of the reasons that he imagines the Torah wants the blessing to be with love is because if you want to achieve something, it's much better to do it with other people. You want to build a wall, build it not just around yourselves, but get other people who are building it around their property as well. And therefore, you're bringing people together to do something. And if somebody has a certain amount of self-interest, which is to spread love, even because it means there will be more love towards them, well, that's a starting point for spreading love throughout society, care, and working together more generally. And the Kohanim, who were our leaders, our spiritual leaders in that time, particularly in biblical times, if they were people who were able to radiate a sense of love and therefore bring people together, as the Torah famously tells us, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, I think often not quite accurately translated as love your neighbor as yourself, but rather love for your neighbor or want for your neighbor what you want for yourself. This is how some of our great rabbis translate it. If that's the way that people act and they have that sense of love, that it's about making everyone's life better and everyone working together, well, that kind of love, hopefully, anybody who wants to build a better society, a better world, can strive towards. So therefore, if a Kohen is thinking in that particular way, before he is the conduit for the blessing, it will be good for him, it will be good for everybody else. And when we say this blessing, some people say it on Friday night, some people say it at other significant events, and we also say it during our daily prayers as well. I think it's very important to bear this in mind. We ask God for the blessing for us, but we want to radiate that love to others. And if everybody does that, of course, then we build a society which is going to help everybody and have, we hope, please God, the finest of values. So that's an important value, I think, that emerges from the Parashat of Naso that we'll be reading, that sense of spreading love, sharing love in this respect, and noting that if I do that and everybody else does, this is the optimum way to get blessing from God. And especially now in the very, very difficult times in which we live, I hope that we can all take that message, spread as much love, spread as much care for others as possible, and it will be reciprocated. And with God's help, let's dare to dream what kind of society we might live in if that gets fulfilled. So that's just a brief thought for the Parashat of Naso. And for those who are going to be watching the Euros as well, let's hope we can enjoy the football and all in the right way too. Now, we're going to move to the Kabbalat Shabbat prayers, which are starting, of course, with Yedid Nefesh, page 576 in the Siddur. As you can see, my friend and colleague Ricky has put this on the screen for you. And if you're using other Siddurim, other than the authorized daily prayer book, which is this text, then just please look in the contents page for Kabbalat Shabbat, welcoming in Shabbat, and this is the introductory page. And we will sing this beautiful song, which welcomes our approach to Shabbat. Think of the Jews in Sfat 500 years ago, greeting Shabbat, so to speak, in the fields with this song. And this is what we'll try and replicate now. Yedid nefesh avarachaman meshoch abdecha el retzonecha yaretz abdecha kemo hayal Yishtachave el muladarecha Yerab lo yedidotecha Nino fetzuf v'chol tam Adonai haolam nafshi cholat avatecha ana elna refanala Abeharotla no amzivecha astit chazek v'titrapei v'hayetala simchat olam v'tik Emuna rachamecha v'chusana abeinahu v'cha ki ze kama nichsof nichtavti Eliron betiferet uzecha eile chomda libi v'chusana ve'yalti talam Igaleina ufros chavivi alai et sukkah shelomecha tahir eretz mikavodecha Nagila v'nismacha bach maher ehov kiva moed b'choneinu kimei olam Yana nine 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 nine, yana nine 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 nine, yana nine 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 nine, yana nine 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 nine, yana nine 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 nine, yana nine 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 nine, yana nine 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 nine, yana nine 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 nine. Yana nine 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 nine. Yana nine 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 nine. Yana nine 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 nine. Yana nine 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 nine. Yana nine 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 nine. Yana nine 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 nine. Yana nine 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 nine. Yana nine 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 nine. Yana nine 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 nine. Yana nine 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 nine. Nine 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 nine. Yana nine 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 nine. Yana nine 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 nine. Yana nine 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 nine. And just before we commence the Kabbalat Shabbat prayers in essence, I'm going to read out two prayers, and I just ask you to answer Amen after each of them. You don't need to say them, just to answer Amen. And of course, we are ever present in our minds is the very difficult and terrible situation in Israel. We are praying for peace. We are praying, Ezrat Hashem, for the return of all of the hostages very, very swiftly, and for God to look after them and their families. And that on all of Israel's borders, there should be relief and there should be peace for everyone in the Middle East. So please answer Amen after, first of all, the prayer for the welfare of the state of Israel, Chayalei Tzahal, and then we'll have another prayer particularly for the hostages. And we should be thinking of all of the people in Israel, especially who are unable to celebrate Shabbat in the way that they and us would like them to. And please God, by next Shabbat, they will be in a much better situation. Mishaberach Avotenu Abraham, Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Yivarech Medinat Yisrael, Rasheha v'Yotzeha, Al ha'adama shenishba la'avotenu latet lanu. Tein b'libam avatecha v'yiratecha l'sa'ada b'mishpat u'b'tzedaka, v'nizkeh b'yameinu l'divrei avadecha ha'neviim, ki mitzion teitzei Torah u'dvar Adonai mirushalayim. Avinu shebashamayim, b'kornach ha'alei tzva hagana l'Yisrael v'anshei kochot ha'bitachon, mekinei eretz kodshenu, shomreim mikol tzara b'tzuka, shlach bracha b'hatzlacha b'chol ma'aseh yedehem. Sim shalom ba'aretz v'simchat olam al kol yosheveha, v'shav Yaakov v'shakat v'sha'anan v'ein macharid. Ufros sukat shalomecha al kol yoshevei tevel hatzecha v'chein yehi ratzon v'nomar Amen. Please God, Israel's leaders should have the wisdom. God should give them the wisdom to make the right decisions, and there should be an end to suffering and an end to war. Acheinu kol beit Yisrael, Acheinu kol beit Yisrael, הנתונים בצרה, בצרה ובשביה, העומדים בין בים ובין ביבשה. המקום ירחם, ירחם עליהם ויוציאם מצרה, לרווחה ומאפלה ליורה ומשיבוד לגאולה, השתה בעגלה ובזמן הקריב, ונאמר Amen. We'll now continue with the Kabbalat Shabbat prayers, as you can see on the screen in the Authorized Daily Prayer Book on page 258, and in all of the Siddurim, other Siddurim, just look up Kabbalat Shabbat, welcoming Shabbat, in the contents page of the Siddur. L'chu neranana l'Adonai, nariya l'tzur yesheinu, nekadem afana b'toda, b'zmirot nariya lo, ki el gadol Adonai u'melech gadol ha'kol Elohim, asher b'yado mechkarei haaretz v'to'afot harim lo, asher lo haya bu asahu v'yabeshet yadav yatzaru, v'hu nishtachave v'nicha nibracha lifnei Adonai Yoseinu, ki hu Eloheinu v'anachnu amarito b'tzon yado, hayom im b'kolo tishma'u, Al takshu levavchem kimriva, ki yom asa b'midbar, shenisuni avotechem b'chonuni, gam ra'u fa'oli, 40 shana akut b'dor, va'omar amtoi levavchem, v'hem lo yadu derachai, asher nishbati v'yapi, im yevon el menuchati. The second paragraph on the page, Psalm 96, the second of the Psalms representing the 6 days of the week in anticipation of Shabbat. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, shiru l'Adonai baruch hu shemo, basaru meyom leyom yeshuato, saperu v'goyim kevodo, b'chol ha'amim neflahotav, כי גדול אדוני יומולל מאוד, הנורא הוא על כל אלוהים אלי, כי כל אלוהי העמים אלילים, ואדוני שמיים עשה, עוד בהדר לפניו, ותפארת במקדשו. הבו לאדוני משפחות עמים, הבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז, הבו לאדוני כבוד שמו, שיומינך ובואו לחצרותיו אלי, השתחוו לאדוני ביד רד קודש, חילו מפניו כל הארץ, אמרו בגויים אדוני מלך, אפתיקון תבל בל תימון, הדינמים במישרים, ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ, ירם הים ומלואו, היה לו שדי וכל אשר בו, אז ירננו כל עצי יער לפני אדוני, כי בא לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק, בימים באמונתו, ינאי נאי נאי And thank you guys for also saying, writing where you are watching from. Great to see people from so many different places, in particular my former colleague and friend Rabbi Josh Sychek. Great to have you on all the way from Connecticut. We now move to the second paragraph on the page, Psalm 97, which is the next one of the 6 Psalms before Lechadoti. Adonai malach tagel haaretz, yismochu im rabim, anam varafel sevivav, tzedek u'mishpat mechon kiso, eish lefanav telech u'tlahit saviv tzarav, heiru v'rakav tevel, ra'ata batachel haaretz, harim kadonag namaso, milifnei Adonai, milifnei Adon, kol haaretz, yigidu shamayim tzidko, v'ra'u chol ha'amim kevodo, יבוש כל עובדי פסל המתהללים באלילים, השתחוו לו כל אלוהים. שמע ותשמח ציון ותגרנה בנות יהודה, למען משפטך אדוני, כי אתה אדוני עליון על כל הארץ, מאוד נעלית על כל אלוהים, אוהבי אדוני ישינו רע, שומר נפשו חסידיו, מיד רשעים יצילם, וזרו על הצדיק כל ישרי לב שמחה, שמחו צדיקים באדוני, והודו לזכר קודשו. We now move on to our next psalm, Psalm 98, which is on page 262. And we particularly ask that God dispenses justice appropriately in the world, and especially judges us favorably, and that we should be judged by others favorably too. מזמור השירו לאדוני שיר חדש, כי נפלאות עשה, הושיע לו ימינו עוזרו הקודשו, הודיע אדוני ישועתו, לעיני הגויים גילה צדקתו, זכר חסדו ואמונתו לבית ישראל, ראו כל אפסי הארץ את ישועת אלוהינו, הריעו לאדוני כל הארץ, פצחו ורננו וזמרו, זמרו לאדוני בכינור, בכינור וכל זמרה, בחצות צרות וכל שופר, הריעו לפני המלך אדוני, ירם הים ומלואו, תבל ויושבי בה, נהרות ימחאוך, יחד הרים ירננו, לפני אדוני קיווה, לישפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק, וימים במישרים. And that's Psalm 99, the second paragraph on the page, which very much in tandem with the Torah portions we're reading at the moment, which describe the journey of the Jewish people in the desert after the Exodus. This psalm talks about God's protection for us and looking after us in the desert after the Exodus and at other times as well. Boy, are we davening, are we praying hard for that now? Adonai malach yirgazu amim yoshem keruvim tanot haaretz. Adonai b'tzion gadol v'ramhu hakol amim yodo shimcha gadol v'nora kadoshu os melech mishpat ha'eh v'takonata misharim mishpat tzaka b'Yakov ata asita ramam Adonai Eloheinu ishtachavu l'hadam raglav kadoshu Moshe v'Yaron b'choanav u'shmo v'korei shemo Korim el Adonai v'hu yahaneim B'hamud anan yidaber aleihem Shamaru eidotav v'chok natan lamo Adonai Eloheinu ata nitam El nosei hayita lahem benokeim alailotam Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu lahar kodsho Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. And our final psalm before Lechadoti, which is on page 264, is Psalm 29, which has the name of God in it 7 times, which relates to the Amidah prayer of Shabbat, which has 7 blessings in it, and has the word kol, meaning voice, 18 times in it, which relates to the weekday Amidah prayer. So therefore, symbolically, it's a kind of gear shift between the week and Shabbat. And a psalm, of course, which relates to the giving of Torah at Mount Sinai, which we celebrated, of course, just a couple of days ago on Shavuot. Mizmor leDavid, havu l'Adonai b'nei elim, havu l'Adonai kavod ba'oz, havu l'Adonai kavod shemo, ishtachavu l'Adonai beyad rahat kodesh, kol Adonai al hamayim, el hakavod irim, Adonai al mayim rabim Kol Adonai ba'koach Kol Adonai be'hadar Kol Adonai shover arazim Vayshaber Adonai et azei ha'levanon Vayarkideb kamo egel Levanon v'Sirion kamo ben Raimim Kol Adonai chotzei b'lavotesh Kol Adonai yachil midbar Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh Kol Adonai yecholel hayalot Vayechesov Ye'aron Ufeichalo Kol Omer Kavod Ay la 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 Adonai Lamabul Yashav Vayeshev Adonai Melech Le'olam Adonai Oz Le'amo Yitein Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Ana b'choach gedulat yeminecha tahatir et zerura kaberinat amecha Sagaveinu tareinu nora Nagibot Roshei Chudecha Kvavat Shomreim Barachem Tareim Rachameim Sikadecha Tamid Komleim Chasin kadosh brov tzvachan heladatecha, Yachid geyer la'amecha, Penei zocharei kedushatecha, Shabbatenu kabel, Ushma tzakatenu, Yodea ta'alumot, Baruch shen gevod malchuto, Leolam va'ed. We, of course, now move on to the famous song of Lecha Dodi, as we prepare to usher in Shabbat. That's when it's sung in synagogue, and also when praying right at the beginning of Shabbat as well. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmiyanu el ha'meyuchad, Adonai echad u'shmo echad, Shemo tiferet v'letila, Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu b'nei lecha, Ki mekor haberacha, Meirosh mikedem nesucha, Sof ma'aseh b'macha Shabbat tchila, Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hamikdash melech ir melucha, Kum mitzei mitoch ha'pecha, Rav lach sheve b'yemek habacha, Hu yachamol alayechem la, Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitna'arim me'afar kuv milivshi, b'ingdei tzitfartecha mi, Al yad ben Yishai beit alachmi, Korvai el nafshi geyala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Itzarari kiva oreku miyori, Uri shir daveri, Kvod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. And sometimes we change the tune at this point to note the difference in the verses, which are now having a slightly more downbeat tone. Rather than being positive and active and encouraging, they say, do not feel upset, do not feel diminished. Despite everything, we pray to God to be with us. He will be with us, and Shabbat will be a blessing for us. And we relate to this with a slightly different tune. Lo tevoshi v'lo tikal mima, tishtochachi umatehemi, ba'ach yechesu ani yeyami, v'nibneta העיר על תילה, Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hayulim shisa shosayich, v'rachaku kol mevaleyayich, yasis alayich Elohayich, kimsos chatana al kala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Yamin usmol tiye protzi, v'yet Adonai taritzi, al yad yesh ben partzi, v'nismecha v'nagila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. We'll pause at this point because it's not yet Shabbat, and the next verse is one of the ways of bringing in Shabbat. But before we conclude, we'll also say the first paragraph of the Shema, and we will sing Yigdal, of course, in the well-known tune for Friday nights. So please do say the first paragraph of the Shema with me. and listen along if you're not familiar. And I hope that the words will become more familiar. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך, בכל נפשך, בכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ולכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וגשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לו תותפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. And we'll now move to Yigdal. I hope it's all a familiar tune to you from Friday night services. יגדל אלוהים חי וישתבח, נמצא בעיני צל מציאותו, אחד ואין יחיד כייחודו, נעלם וגם אין סוף לאחדותו, אין לו דמות הגוף ואינו גוף, לא נערוך אליו קדושתו, קדמון לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון ואין ראשית לראשיתו, הינו אדון עולם נכון נוצר, יורה גדולתו ומלכותו, שבע נבואתו נתנו, אל אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו, לא קם בישראל כמו שעוד, נביא ומביט את אמונתו, תורת אמת נתן לי המועל, על יד נביאו נאמן ביתו, לא יכל להיבהל ולא ימיד דתו, לעולמים לזולתו, צופה ויודע שתערנו, מביט לסוף דבר בקדמתו, גומל לי איש חסד כמפעלו, נותן לרשע רק רשעתו, ישתק לקץ ימין משיחנו, לתום חגי קץ ישועתו, מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך הדיית שם תהילתו, מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך הדיית שם תהילתו. So thank you again, everyone, for joining. Thank you to Ricky for looking after our technical side. And I wish you all Shabbat Shalom, a Shabbat of Shalom in the fullest sense, Lanu Ul-Chol Yisrael, for us, for the whole Jewish people, and for the world as well. Shabbat Shalom. Take care. The very best to you all.